Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the Specialist Trading educational presentation. Now, today I'd like to talk to you about taking your trading up a notch. And the way we do that is by applying our dynamic duo. Now, if you haven't heard me speak about this before, this is where we take two of our most, I would say, consistent methods and match them up together. And the reason why we've done this is because when we combine these two methods together, they really increase your odds for consistency, and they have this type of synergy for success. For example, let me share with you this example here in this chart of WDFC. This is WD-40 and Company. All right, most traders looking at this, once again, we get traders on a daily basis who become students and members of ours who apply their old ways in which they were taught how to trade. And many students would look at this and say, well, kind of like in a directionless market, right? We're just basically going sideways. And a lot of students come from taking those $10,000 courses about support and resistance or volume or Fibonacci lines or Elliott wave. And they say, well, Steve, this is major resistance. We don't want to buck, where the sellers are. So I guess I'm not really going to do anything here. All right. Here's the difference with the dynamic duo, because remember, it's the combination of two specific, highly consistent methods. The first method actually generated a buy signal right here. So there was no talk of any support and resistance, no talk of overbought, oversold. It strictly generates the buy signal off of a pattern recognition. And then the second method confirms that signal. You see, because we know well enough that not everything is going to work 100% of the time. And if there were a tool that were able to filter out some of the bad setups from the good ones, we could increase our odds for success. So we have this synergy now of a highly consistent method generating signals accompanied with a method that's able to filter out those signals. So where everyone else was thinking there was resistance and there was no real clear-cut edge as to what WDFC wanted to do, we knew we were going to be buyers with the dynamic duo, and lo and behold, the stock rose 40% or I should say 40 points in the next 4 days. Now, if you have trouble trying to learn concepts like this, don't worry, we made it simple. Pro Trader Strategies and myself developed the PTS Primo Charting Platform. This is the educational platform that actually teaches you how to trade. It's similar to having your own personal mentor sitting there with you 24/7. And all the examples you're going to be seeing today were generated using the PTS Primo Charting Platform. So welcome once again. My name is Stephen Primo. I'm the president and founder of Specialist Trading. I teamed up with Pro Trader Strategies about 12 years ago with one goal, and that was simply to educate traders around the world. I mean, think of it. How do you make your own trading decisions? Most of the time, myself included when I first started trading, our decisions were based off of what someone or something else told us to do, right? Now, 43 years ago when I first started trading, there were no chat rooms and there were no blogs, but at the time we had newsletters, and we used to still watch the earnings reports and listen to the guys on TV, and really nothing much has changed. Instead of newsletters, they're now called trading rooms and chat rooms. But you still do the same thing I was doing 43 years ago, which is basically having someone tell you what to buy or what to sell on a daily basis, or tell you what the perfect market is you should be trading, or what they think this stock is going to do, or what interest rates are going to happen, or who's going to win the election, or what that's going to affect the market. You see, we always rely on someone or something else to tell us what to do. And ultimately, that's what leads to failure in trading. Because when you do that, you take yourself out of the game. That's why Pro Trader Strategies and I teamed up with that goal of simply educating you so that you could ultimately make your own trading decisions. In my 43 years of trading, when I first started trading on the floor of the Pacific Stock Exchange, the only traders I've known who have consistently generated gains are the ones who make their own trading decisions. So this is my goal, to teach you how to trade with the specialist edge and to teach you how to really make your own qualified trading decisions. So for the very first time, you can be in charge of your own trading destiny. And you'll see that attention to detail we give in today's class. Now, before we begin, as always, we are first required by law to share this with you, so please take a moment to view our disclaimer. I'm going to show you a lot of performance results today, some of them just a few days old using the dynamic duo, but please remember that we can in no way guarantee that any of the results I'm about to share with you will be repeated in the future. And also remember, since we are first and foremost an educational company, all examples are strictly for educational purposes only. Now we have a good crowd here today, so I'd like to invite each and every one of you, if you haven't done so already, to follow us on Twitter. I post different educational information on a daily basis, anywhere from signals that our strategies or techniques have generated to little bits of financial wisdom. So if you're looking for more education on a daily basis, please copy down our handle right there, abbreviation for Specialist Trading, and please feel free to follow us on Twitter. Now remember, as I stated in the opening statements, we are first and foremost an educational company. That separates us from all the other webinars you may have attended in. And the fact that if you come here today thinking I'm going to tell you what to buy or sell as soon as this ends, or if you think I'm going to tell you what the perfect market is or what I think the market's going to be doing, you've come to the wrong place. Once again, that goes entirely against our philosophy. You should be making those decisions. You should never allow anyone to trade for you, even if it's just a neighbor down the street or your brother-in-law telling you what he thinks of this stock. Sure, you can take their suggestions, but you should have the information right there in front of you to decide whether it's valid or not. And this is the gap we fill. This is the service we provide. We give you all these tips, techniques, and strategies so that you can ultimately make your own trading decision. This is what we call the specialist edge. This is the same edge I was taught some 43 years ago when I first started trading, and this is what I try to instill in all of my students in over 115 countries around the world and in every state in the United States. So my goal is not to trade for you, but to teach you how to trade with the specialist edge. Now, before we begin, since we have a good crowd here today, we are also a little bit different from other webinars in that we want to take your questions, but please wait till the end to ask them. I know many of you have heard this before, but if we stop at every slide, we'll be here far too long. So please, if you have a question, wait till the end. And I'll answer the most common question, and that is this being recorded? Yes, it is. So if you have to leave early, if you want some technical assistance, oftentimes if you turn your computer off and on, you can't hear or see clearly, it'll be resolved. But not to worry, each and every one of you will get a link to this recording, okay? So with that stated, let's begin. And I'd like to start out with something, sharing with you what my mentors taught me. Because remember, when I first started trading 43 years ago on the floor, I struggled tremendously. I was most likely doing the exact same thing many of you are doing right now, or at least have been taught. The same conventional wisdom, the traditional wisdom that's supposed to work, but ultimately we know that it really doesn't work in terms of consistency. So here's what they first said to me. They said, Steve, the market you're trading, okay? And that's regardless of the time frame or the direction, whether you're going long or short, whether it's a 5-minute bar or whether you look at weekly bars, it makes no difference. Whether you're trading Bitcoin, stocks, or futures, the market you're trading, regardless of time frame or direction, tells you everything you need to know. Now, this was a very difficult concept for me to grasp. And in fact, it took a long time for me to grasp this because it went against everything I had been already taught, all the books I had read, videos I had purchased, the seminars I went to, because everything I was supposed to know about the markets, came from the earnings, right? Or came from some guy on TV or came from interest rates. But it didn't come from, what I was looking at, the chart in front of me. But ultimately, when I really had no other choice other to accept this, that's when my trading started to become more consistent, or at least have a higher level of consistency. So today I'm going to be talking about 2 methods to help you listen to the market, because since the market tells you everything you need to know, we have to learn how to listen to it, right? So here are the 2 methods that help you listen to them. And guess what? The first method is one that I talked about in last week's Wednesday webinar. It's strategy number 4. We talked about this last week in detail, and I'm sure many of you, we had a number of students sign up for the strategy number 4 course. Excuse me. I have a tickle in my throat today. But a number of students signed up for that course, and they're very happy with it. It's a highly consistent course, and let me just share with you some of the highlights. It's a pattern recognition strategy. If you weren't able to see us last week, in which I went in and gave 2 rules to this particular method, it's based off of a pattern that occurs over and over again in any market, in any direction, and in any time frame. Now, strategy 4, the first strategy I was taught to by my mentors, is designed for traders looking to catch momentum. And it has an uncanny ability to do this many times before it appears that a momentum is actually starting to take place. And you'll see that in some examples today. The beauty of this is that it only uses one indicator, and we taught you what that indicator was last week. It's the 50-period moving average, okay? But really what you're looking for is a specific pattern. We went over it last week, so I'm not going to really go back and recap that. But let me just share with you how it works. Let's look at some older examples just to understand the process. All right, here's the 50-period moving average. The first rule is we want to look for a bar that is above the 50-period moving average, or bars that are above. This tells us we're only going to be a buyer. Then we look for bars that close in the top 25%, like this one right here. Now we have other bars that close in the top 25%, but they did not meet all the requirements, the remaining two requirements of strategy number 4. But this one did, and we had a really nice trade, 20 points to the upside. See how easy that was? Now here's an example in PINS, okay? We are below the 50-period moving average, so we're never going to generate a buy signal. We'll only look for sell signals. And we close in the bottom 25% of its range, so the first two requirements are met. Now the remaining two requirements are met, so our software, our platform, automatically generates a red down arrow on the signal bar right here. And look what happened, a quick 10 points to the downside. Now the beauty of strategy number 4 is if the trend is strong enough, you will see a lot more signals being generated along the way. So don't worry if you miss one. Many times there are more generated along the way. Now, as we said earlier, all of our methods are consistent. Now, most traders think consistency means that, wow, this must mean we generate a lot of winners. As I often state, consistency does not mean that you generate a lot of winners. Consistency means that you have an awareness you will have losses. That is perfectly okay. But a consistent method is one that's able to recoup those losses. Okay? So that's what we're looking for. Now, let's look at this next trade here in SIX 6. All right, so we are below the 50-period moving average. We see a sell signal is generated. It's validated by the software. It automatically generates a red arrow. And so let's say this is your first trade. You decide to sell this. Look what happens. If you had a rather tight stop, you got stopped out. Or maybe you stayed in the trade, excuse me, and you say to yourself, well, I guess I have a loss here, but I'm going to hang on. We're still below the 50-period moving average, so Steve says the overall trend is still down. And then what do we have here? Another sell signal. So you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to double up because now I don't need it to go down as far, and then I'll just break even and maybe get out. So you sell some more, and then this happens. And now you say, wow, you know, we're above the 50-period moving average now. I'm not supposed to sell above. And it looks like it's going higher, so I'm going to cover my loss and take, you know, my losses and get out. So you get out, and now it starts to roll over and go down. But all the while it's rolling over and going down, it's still above the 50, and two more buy signals are generated. So you say to yourself, okay, I'm willing to take those first two losses. I think I'm going to make it back, and I'll buy these right here. So you jump in, you buy some more, and look what happens, okay? At this point, you're ready to throw your computer out the window and tell me that this stuff doesn't work and that you wasted your money and demand a refund because you're saying, okay, you said there will be losses, but look at this. All of my trades were losses, okay? So we have to ask ourselves, what if we could filter out some of these bad setups, some of these bad signals? Because they will occur when you have these kind of sideways markets, as we did from here to here. Well, there is. This brings us to the second method, which is the PET-D. And we're going to use this as a confirmation tool. Now, I know a lot of you know what the PET-D is, but many of you who are not familiar with this, this is probably one of the most powerful tools we have here. It's a tool I was introduced to on the floor of the Pacific Stock Exchange. At that time, we called it the formula because it was a formula that we had to calculate on a nearly tick-by-tick basis. But now what we've done is we've devised it into a color bar tool. So here's how it works. Someone looking at this chart would say, okay, well, it's obvious we're at a clear-cut uptrend until this happened, right? So how does the PET-D help us? Well, basically, the PET-D is a translator. It's not a predictive tool. It doesn't predict how high or how low something will go. It doesn't generate signals on its own. It basically translates on a tick-by-tick basis what the market wants to do. And the way we have figured out how to show you what it's translating is to color the bars. Green if it's translating and wants to go higher, and red if it's translating and wants to go lower. So as we see here, once we applied the PET-D, we knew well in advance with these series of green bars that it wanted to go higher. And even though it didn't pick the top, we knew well in advance before it went and made these lows that it wanted to go lower. So the beauty is that it tells you which direction you should be trading. And once you know that direction, you can confirm if your strategy is in sync with that direction. Okay? So we want to use it in this aspect with the strategy number 4 setups as a confirmation tool. Now, when we add these two things together, strategy number 4 along with a PET-D, we have a combination that's called the dynamic duo. The reason why we call it that is because our students have told us this has really taken their trading up a notch, just like the title of today's presentation. Because before, they had achieved some level of consistency, but now it's really taken it to a higher level, because now they're able to filter out some of these losing setups. So here's how it works. If you're trading with a dynamic duo and strategy number 4 generates a buy signal, only trade that buy signal when the setup bar or the signal bar is colored green by the PET-D. Okay? Remember, we don't care what the bars were colored before the signal bar. We don't care what they were colored afterwards. It's just the bar that is above the arrow, the auto-generated arrow, that must be colored or outlined green by the PET-D. That's it. It's that simple. Now let's say strategy number 4 auto-generates a sell signal. All right? There's a red arrow above the bar. Well, we're only going to trade that strategy number 4 sell signal if it's colored red by the PET-D, not the arrow if the bar is colored red by the PET-D or outlined red. That's it. We don't care what the bars prior to it or after are colored. It makes no difference. All we care about is the setup bar. That's the bar either above the arrow, the green arrow, or below the red arrow. Okay? So let's show you using the PTS Primo Charting Platform how simple it is to apply this process. Now remember, when I first started using this years ago, I had to calculate everything by hand, not only strategy number 4, but also the PET-D. And it was very cumbersome. We've taken all the hard work out of it for you. Everything is one click away. Let me show you the process, how simple it is. All right, let's look at this older chart in APA. All right? All right, we're going down, going back up, going back down. Once we click on strategy number 4, a drop-down menu appears. And if you want to check your work to see if you're understanding and being able to properly identify strategy number 4 signals, all you have to do is click on signal arrows, and you'll see the auto-generated arrows appear. Now, as we look at this, we see that we have a number of signals here, some sells, some buys, some are better than others. For example, this sell signal would have worked out very nicely. But this sell signal would have been a loss. It went straight up after that. Now, this buy signal would have worked out very nicely. But these following buy signals would have all been losses. Nothing would have happened. We would have most likely been whipsawed and stopped down. So this is where the confirmation tool comes in, the PET-D. On our platform, now all you have to do is click on the PET-D, and it automatically colors the bars. Now remember, in order to trade the dynamic duo, we need the sell setup bars to be colored red, and we need the buys to be colored green. So let's look at that first sell. It's below the red arrow, and it was outlined or colored red. So we could have taken this and potentially captured 5 points. Not a bad little trade, right? In about a week's time. Now, the second sell signal should have been colored red, but what is the color of the bar? Green. So this, according to the dynamic duo rules, tells us we do not take this trade. Therefore, we didn't have a loss. It filtered out that losing trade. Now we switch over to buy mode because the dynamic duo has validated that now we're in an uptrend. So we have a buy setup here, and in order for us to take this, the bar above the arrow has to be either colored or outlined green, and it is. So had we taken that, potentially we could have captured 8 points in about a week or two. Now, the PET-D now, along with strategy 4, dynamic duo setups are now all buys, but look at the colors. They're all red. So even though they're buy signals, the PET-D is saying these are not confirmed, because the short-term trend wants to go lower. So we don't want to take these buy setups. So you would not have taken any of them. So look what we did here. We only, out of these first trades here, we only took 2, which potentially could have captured altogether 13 points. And right here, we didn't take any. And some of the best trades are the ones you never take, because look what ultimately happened, okay? Do you see the power of the dynamic duo? It's so simple because, remember, as my mentors taught me, the market tells you everything you need to know. The dynamic duo is not based on interest rates. It's not based on news. It's not based on who's going to win the election. It's not based on support and resistance, the Fibonacci lines or Elliott wave. It's not based on volume, or it's not based on what some master so-called guru is thinking. It's based off what the market, the source of what you're trading, is telling you. So that's where you should be taking your signal from, the source, which is the chart in front of you and nothing else. All right, so let's look at some recent dynamic duo signals. Now that you know the process, remember, once again, everything you're going to be seeing displayed is taken directly off of our PTS Primo Charting Platform. You're going to see how simple it is to actually apply this process. All right, let's look at this chart here in NTRS. This was in the beginning of October, just about 3 weeks ago. All right, looks like the market's starting to go higher, and we think we've spotted a couple of strategy number 4 setups. Because remember, we are not a systematic company, meaning that this is not a black box. We teach you exactly what to look for. We provide the strategy number 4 arrows as educational tools to check and validate your work. So let's say you see a signal or two here. In order to see if you're right, go up to the green strategy tab right here on our platform, click on strategy number 4. In the drop-down menu, click on signal arrow to check and see if you're properly identifying the arrows. And guess what? You identified them. Now we have a buy signal right here. If you would have bought on the close, guess what? It opened up all right, but now it closed lower. And now we have a sell signal. So looking back in hindsight, which one should you have taken? This is where the dynamic duo really comes in helpful. Before even taking these, what you want to do is click on the Pet D, and it automatically colors the bars. Remember, in order to take a buy signal, this bar has to be colored or outlined green. In order to take a sell signal, this bar has to be colored or outlined red. Let's see what the Pet D translated to us. Well, the buy signal was valid because it's outlined green, and the sell signal was not. So even though we opened and then looked like we reversed here, we should still be long because the Pet D is telling us the short-term trend is right now wanting to go up. So it's translating that the stock wants to go higher. And we're not going to take that sell signal. And the stock went up 10 points. All right. See how simple this is? And this whole process takes less than a couple of minutes every night. Let's look at HAE. All right. Looks like the stock is kind of in a sideways holding pattern, but strategy number 4 generated a buy signal. Now, if you want to get a little bit more confidence and take your trading up a notch, you apply the Pet D for the dynamic duo, and we see that it's outlined green. Now, I know a lot of beginning students, they say, well, Steve, isn't it good that all the bars are green? Well, yeah, I mean, that's a nice, display there to give you a little bit more confidence. But remember, it makes no difference. All of the previous bars could have been colored red. It makes absolutely no difference. The only bar we are concerned with is the bar above the arrow. If that's outlined green, that's fine. And now once we're in the trade, we're not concerned with the bars anymore, unless we're using them for an entirely different technique. But for the dynamic duo, we're not concerned anymore with the color of the bars. So look what happened, 12 points in the next week or so. All right, here's another example in ADP, automatic data processing, where we had 2 signals again. Which one do we take? Once again, the Pet D helps us with the dynamic duo. The sell signal, in order to be a valid dynamic duo setup, needs to be colored red. And what color is this? It's green. So we're not going to take that. We'll take this buy signal though. All right. So in the beginning of October, just this past month, we could have gone long ADP, and in a week or so, 12 points to the upside. Remember, this is all based without having to know what the earnings are, without looking at support and resistance, without looking at the institutions or earnings or anything. It doesn't listen to those things because we know there's no consistency in those things. As I say in almost every webinar, I used those things 43 years ago, and they didn't work then. So there's absolutely no reason to think that they're going to start working today or tomorrow. Just focus on what the source is telling you. Remember, the market you are trading, regardless of time frame or direction, tells you everything you need to know. All right, 2 more signals here in SPAQ, okay? Spartan Energy. Which one do you take? Apply the Pet D and the buy signal. In order for us to take this, would have had to been colored green. What color is it outlined? It's outlined red. So even though we had 3 or 4 days of some slightly upward movement, we didn't take that. And that's a good choice because it kind of just would have wasted our time. But then look what happened. The sell signal was colored red. So this is one we would have taken. And in the next week, the stock fell 3 points. I know a lot of you say, well, Steve, 3 points, that's not a lot. You're right. But guess what? This is an inexpensive stock. 3 points was comparable to 22% loss in the price of the stock in 1 week. Now think if Tesla generated the same signal and lost 22% of its value in 1 week. Don't you think that that would have been a tremendous move? So it's all relative. Regardless of what the price is, the PET-D can be applied to any market, any time frame, and any price of the stock. All right, let's look at a chart here in Snap, okay? This is Snap Incorporated. Now, once again, the way most students that come into our courses would say, you know, well, Steve, I've been trained that this is a range market. Look at, we're not doing anything. Why would I be interested in this? Well, because the traditional wisdom that you're using is faulty. It's not consistent. So we're not even going to consider that. What we want to do is listen to the market. And what's the market telling us? Well, it's telling us that there may be a signal here. So in order to check our work, we click on strategy number 4, click on signal arrow, and where we thought there was a range market, well, sure, we've been going sideways, but during that sideways action, the market says it wants to go higher according to this pattern. Now we know this pattern is highly consistent, but still at times it will generate some faulty signals. So in order to give us that added level of consistency and to increase our odds for consistency and give us a little bit more confidence along the way, we add the second method in the dynamic duo, which is the PET-D. Click that on, and in order for us to take these with the dynamic duo, these bars have to be colored or outlined green. And as we can see, they both were. So these are both valid dynamic duo buy signals in Snap. And these were just a couple of weeks ago. Now, nothing much happened 3 days after that, but look what happened after. The stock gapped up and went up 15 points. Now, how did we know that? People always say, well, how do you know this thing was going to gap up like that? Are you guys looking at the news or anything? Or how do you know? Remember, we do not know how high something will go or how low something will go. We're not a predictive course here. We don't tell you how high. We have different guidelines in which to trade, but our goal as a trader is really simple. It's twofold. The first thing is to listen to the market because it tells you what it wants to do. And then the second job of a trader is simply to jump on board with whatever the market wants to do. That's all. Listen, find out what it wants to do, and then jump on board. We don't have any idea how high it will go or how low it will go. We just know that it wants to continue going. Here's another example. Let's say you're a trend trader, okay, some type of trend line trader, and you see here that, well, we've broken the downward short-term trend, and we've broken out, so you want to buy here. And guess what? Strategy number 4 generated a buy signal as well. Now, most traders would just trade that signal, but we want to take our trading up a notch. So we add the PET-D, and it's confirmed. Remember, we do not care what the previous color of the bars were prior to the signal. As long as the signal is confirmed by the PET-D, that's all we're concerned with. And the stock went up 20 points coming into mid-October. Another example, NOC. All right, most traders would say, well, Steve, I go to that chat room. They really like this stock. They talk about it all the time. Look at, we've hit some support right here, and we're a little bit oversold, and we have a reversal close near the lows, the next day close to the high. I'm going to buy this. Okay. And guess what? Strategy 4 generated a buy signal. So we have no problem with that. But remember, the dynamic duo takes your trading up a notch because it's able to filter out a lot of those bad setups. So is this a good setup or not? All we have to do is add the PET-D, and we see now that the setup bar should have been colored green, but what color is it? It's outlined red. Now, a lot of people would say, well, I don't understand, Steve, why it's outlined red. Should it be colored red? No, because it's an up day. So even though it's an up day, the PET-D is telling you that this is an up day in a short-term downtrend. So the translator is telling us that don't get fooled by this. This is not confirming that pattern. So therefore, we're not going to take it. Now, someone going to that chat room or that trading room where that so-called great trader is telling you to buy this would have jumped in and bought it, whereas traders who listen to the market and not, someone in a chat room or a trading room but have learned how to listen to the market would have said, no, the market's telling me not to take this trade. And that would have been a wise choice. Now, since all the bars are red, we look for sell setups. And look at the nice sell setups we had here. So if you had not taken that trade, you wouldn't have lost anything, and you would have had a chance to go short here, which would have potentially captured 11 points. Here's an example in RUN, run. Okay, now we have what we call here a cluster of buy signals. This is when the market is not only telling us, according to this pattern, that it wants to go higher, it's pretty much screaming that it wants to go higher. But that's not enough. The pattern is great, but it's not enough. We want to be able to confirm that. So all we have to do is apply the PET-D. And each and every one of these signals, the strategy number 4 pattern signals, has been confirmed. So it's okay to take this trade according to the dynamic duo course. And the stock quickly went up 22 points. Not a bad little trade, right? Now look what happened. All of a sudden it fell out of bed. Now towards the end of today's presentation, I'm going to share with you how you could have exited towards the highs here and gotten out with a nice profit. But in the meantime, once the trend did change, where the color's changing here, look at another buy signal was generated. Now this time, what color is it? Even though it's at the same levels as the other ones, the PET-D is now translating that no, we're in a downward short-term move here. So this pattern is not going to be that valid here. So I wouldn't take this trade. And guess what? You would have saved yourself a lot of money. All right. So you see the power of the dynamic duo, how it can really help you with your trading. That's why we titled this presentation, Taking Your Trading Up a Notch with the Dynamic Duo. All right, here's an example in Tiffany, okay? As we see here in October, coming into the middle of October, just a couple of weeks ago, Tiffany had been going straight up. Now, someone looking at this would say, well, you know, Steve, I'm sorry, but I like to follow this guy in that trading room, and he says we have to sell this, okay? And someone would say, well, why are you selling it? He says, well, it's kind of a reversal. We opened higher and closed lower. But on top of that, that master indicator he watches says that we're tremendously overbought. So I said, okay, you're basing it off that. Well, I would base my decisions off what the market's telling me. According to this pattern, we're in luck because the pattern also generated a sell signal. But that's not enough just to jump in, because we know that consistency means there will be faulty signals every once in a while. So how do we take our trading up a notch? By applying the second method in the dynamic duo, which is the PET-D. So we would click on the PET-D and see if it's confirmed. And it's not. In order for us to take this trade with a dynamic duo setup, that bar needs to be colored red, and it's colored green. So therefore, even though your master trader in some chat room or trading room you go to tells you to sell this, we're not going to take the trade. And where you would have taken it, you would have probably lost about 14 points if you hung in there. But we were out, we never took it, and so we didn't have a loss at all. See the beauty of the dynamic duo, how it can take your trading up a notch. Let's look at this example in EV, okay? Eaton Vance Corp. Now, let's say you are a trend trader. Once again, you like to look at breakout bars or trend lines. Well, here we have a downward trend line. And you're a short-term trader, you see we broke out here, and you just want to confirm it, and you see that 2 days later we're not going lower, so this looks like a real breakout. So you jump in and buy, and look what happens. You get stopped out with a loss. And then, lo and behold, you have another downward trend, and there's another breakout. So you say to yourself, well, gosh, this is probably the valid one. This is the one I should buy. But you're too frightened to buy, okay? Because you already lost on this one, and you're afraid that it's going to do the same thing. Well, with strategy 4, a buy signal was generated, and you had a really nice trade. But remember, that's how strategy 4 works. It often generates these really nice signals because in the next couple of weeks, you're going to potentially make 24 points. But in order to give you that added level of confidence to take these signals, you want to apply the PET-D. So was it confirmed by the PET-D as we apply it? Yes, it was. This was confirmed. And so you would have taken this signal. Now, someone looking back would say, well, Steve, but this was confirmed as well. But remember, the dynamic duo means that it's a strategy number 4 signal. And the dynamic duo never generated a signal here. The pattern was not met. The requirements were not met. But they were right here. All right, let's look at the first chart we shared with you in the opening display here, WDFC, WD40. Remember where most traders would say, well, this is clear-cut resistance. How did we find out that this was actually something to be bought? Well, remember, in the course, this is not a black box. We teach you what to look for. We teach you what this pattern is. and how it occurs over and over and over again in any market and in any time frame. In order to check your work, excuse me, what you want to do is click on strategy number 4. In the drop-down menu, click on signal arrow, and you'll see if you're right. Because if there are actual signals there, you'll see the up bars or the down bars. So let's say you thought there were a couple of buy signals there. Well, you see one, so you were right, at least with this one setup. All right, now, that's a very consistent setup, but it's not consistent enough. We want to take our trading to the next level, to the next notch. So what we do is we apply the second method of our dynamic duo, which is the PET-D. Click on the PET-D on our platform, and the colors automatically change. Now, we have confirmation that it's okay to take this trade. Why? Because the bar is outlined green. So you have the combination, the synergy of both these highly consistent methods put together. So you could have taken that trade on the 16th of October, and in less than a week, potentially could have captured 40 points, okay? That's the beauty of the dynamic duo in action. This just happened like less than 2 weeks ago. Now, let's look at this setup here in VRTX. Once again, we have a sell signal generated by strategy 4. We apply the PET-D, and we see that it's verified. It's colored red. 52 points to the downside in the next couple of weeks, okay? This was coming into the last week we had here in October. And then lastly, ALGN, all right? A buy signal was generated in the first week in October. We apply the PET-D, and this bar is colored green. Remember, we do not care what the previous or the bars afterwards are colored. All we are concerned with is the bar above or below the arrow. If it's an up arrow, we need to have this bar green, which it was. Now, nothing much happened for the first 2 weeks of this setup. So you had the choice whether to stay in or to get out. But had you stayed in, potentially you could have captured 150 points coming into last week. This was on the 23rd. This was just last Friday, I believe. All right, so let's look at the dynamic duo applied to other markets, because we know not everyone just trades daily bars of stocks. Let's look at a 2-hour chart of the British pound, okay? The same things apply. You know, people that trade currency pairs use the same inconsistent traditional wisdom on that they do on stocks. Once again, someone could say, Steve, we're in a range market here. This is a whipsaw. I don't want to do anything on this 2-hour time frame. But remember, once again, we only listen to the market. And if we want to check our work, we click on strategy 4, signal arrows, and we see that there were actually 2 buy signals here, okay? So where everyone else thinks this is a market to avoid, we're looking for a buy setup here, and we have 2 of them. Now, in order to confirm, nothing changes because we're looking at currency pairs. We apply the PET-D, and we need these bars to both be outlined green, and they both were. So we have 2 valid dynamic duo setups. And look what happened in just a couple of days. From October 20th to October 21st, you could have potentially captured 200 pips. That's roughly about $2,000 per unit, okay? Just in a day and a half, 2 days. All right, what if you're an intraday trader of the E-mini futures, the way I am? Or here's a 30-minute chart of the E-mini futures on the 25th, which was last Sunday. We have a lot of traders that trade, like to trade the overnight sessions, especially on Sunday night, to get a head start on the week to come. So this was taken on a 30-minute chart last Sunday evening, okay? Now, someone looking at this would say, well, Steve, there's major support here. I want to be a buyer, all right? That program I bought, that $10,000 course I took, says that there's major support. This is where the institutions are buying. So if they're buying, I want to be a buyer, all right? To see how all of my decisions are made off of someone or something else's decisions, not based off of the market. Because remember, the market tells you everything you need to know. So what's the market telling me? According to this pattern, it's telling me to sell. This pattern generated a sell signal, but that's not enough. We want to have the added confidence to go short. So in order to have that added confidence, we apply the second method, which is the PET-D. And, well, not only is that bar colored red, all the bars are red. So the market is telling us on Sunday night, last Sunday, just a few days ago, it wanted to go lower. All right. This is well before news of, the market falling out of the bed the way it has this past couple of days. Well before that. If you wanted to get a head start on the market fall this last week, guess what? You could have potentially made 480 points coming into Monday. All right. Remember when the market was down 700 points at one time, or actually it was down close to 1,000 points. Now it's hard to believe. Had you taken that one signal just this last Sunday night, all right, today's Wednesday, we're talking about 3 or 4 days ago. Had you taken that signal at 10 o'clock Pacific time, Monday morning, you could have potentially captured 480 points. That's $24,000 per contract, okay? Now, had you missed that and you didn't take signals overnight in the overnight markets, well, guess what? Look at all these signals that were generated on that Monday to go short. Now, lastly, when the markets really start to be very fearful and a lot of traders want to abandon the stock market altogether, they still want to trade or invest. A lot of traders and investors like to get into something more tangible, like commodities. And a lot of students are always asking me, Steve, can these methods and techniques work on commodities? They can work on any market, any time frame, any direction. Now, here's a weekly chart. Now, we've already looked at a 2-hour chart of the British pound, a 30-minute chart of the futures, E-mini futures. Now, here's a weekly chart of soybeans. All right, and the same process applies. We have a sell signal, according to strategy number 4, followed by a buy signal. Which one do we take? Well, this is where the PET-D comes in extremely handy. Because once you apply the PET-D, sell signal should have the bar colored red. The buy signal should have the bar colored green. All right, so what colors are they? Well, are we going to take this sell signal on soybeans? Absolutely not. But in August, on this weekly chart, remember this is a weekly time frame coming into this past month, we could have gotten long soybeans in the middle. And remember, I know nothing about soybeans. I don't, follow economically or what's going on in the world, with the supply and demand of soybeans. All I know is what the chart, the source, is telling me. It's telling me to buy soybeans on a weekly time frame in August. And look what happened coming into this last week. Okay, that's a lot of points, a lot of potential, thousands of dollars you could have captured trading soybeans. Look at it, it's gone straight up. How did we know? We didn't know. There's nothing fundamental we follow. The market, just as I said, my mentors taught me 40 years ago, the market tells you everything you need to know. So why listen to anything else? Why overcomplicate your trading? All right, so let's recap before we tell you about a great offer we have for all of you today. Strategy number 4, all right? A highly consistent method. It's based off a pattern that occurs over and over again in any market and any time frame. You want to combine that with the PET-D because we know that not every signal that strategy number 4 generates will be a valid one, will be a good one. Sometimes they fail. So the PET-D used in this case is able to filter out many of those faulty signals. So when you combine these two highly consistent methods, what you get is our synergy for success. We call it the dynamic duo. You've just seen examples, some that happened within the last couple of days in the markets, all time frames using the dynamic duo, okay? Now, the last thing, most important thing in this presentation was our PTS Primo Charting Platform. You saw how simple it is to apply this process because accessing the dynamic duo is as easy as one click away. On our platform, all you have to do is click on strategy 4, click on the PET-D, and you'll see if there's a valid dynamic duo signal right there, okay? So ask yourself, do you think these 2 edges that I just shared with you can help your trading starting in 2021? I think the majority of you today, we have a good class here today, the majority of you will say, oh gosh, yes, this would really help me. It's so simple and it really makes sense. So guess what? We have a great offer for all the attendees today. For taking time out of your Wednesday, we have a great special. We're going to offer you our dynamic duo special. This is strategy number 4 along with the PET-D, okay, which makes up the dynamic duo. You're going to get instant course access, detailed instructions so that you'll know and understand all the entries, all the exits, and all the stops. You'll get the automatic buy and sell arrows. You can get the complete course rules along with 4 more different and completely entirely different trading techniques, which include the PET-D, okay? This is really, really a great offer, but we're going to kick it up a notch as well. We're going to offer you 12 months of the platform included with that because we know how much simpler it is to trade the dynamic duo with the platform. Now, a full year, 12 months will cost you close to $1,800. But we're going to discount that today tremendously. We're going to give you 12 months of our platform entirely free. If you become a student of mine in the dynamic duo course, you will get an entire free year of the platform. Now, this is unbelievable because not only will you get the PET D and Strategy 4, you'll also get so many more features that have taken me close to 4 decades to accumulate, like our 90 technical indicators you'll get on here, along with our signal scanner, along with our strength of trend tool, personalized tech support. But let me talk about, just share with you 2 of the really powerful techniques that are included on the platform that you won't find anywhere else. All right. This is the exit levels along with the signal scan. Now, every night you can scan the S&P 500, you can scan currency pairs, you can scan Asian markets, European markets, you can scan Bitcoin, you can scan futures, I should say, commodities for dynamic duo setups. Now, if you had been a member of our course just a couple of weeks ago, you would have seen that there was a buy signal on the 7th of October in T-Mobile, all right? It was validated by the PET D, so you have a very valid dynamic duo setup here. Now, what a lot of students like to do is say, well, Steve, okay, I know all about how to identify and how to use the platform to identify this and scan for this, but where do I get out? I'm a little confused about that. Well, we teach you upwards of 7 different exit methods. The good news is one of those methods is auto-generated on our platform. These are range extensions. All you have to do is double-click on strategy number 4 in the drop-down menu, click on range extension exits, and you'll automatically see this one method appear here. These are the different exit levels, all right? So on the 7th, you would have known even prior to entering into this trade all the different high probability exit levels. Now, if you're the type of trader that likes to get in and out quickly, I would suggest using these first 2 levels. If you're the type of trader that's more of a swing trader or likes to get the most bang for your buck, I would suggest exiting either at 3 or 4. So as we see, had you gone long T-Mobile, in the next week, you could have generated an 8-point gain using the 4th and final exit in just about a week's time. Now, here's what happens with most of our students. They fall in love with this and they say, this is amazing. But then they start to say to themselves, Steve, I'm getting a little greedy because, 8 points, that's not enough for me. Well, here's the one thing we suggest. With our exit levels, we always say it's best to get out at the 4th and final exit level because that's usually where the trend changes. So don't get too greedy, because had you gotten too greedy and said, you know what, I'm going to stay in a little bit longer, you most likely would have lost all of your profits. You see the value of this one proprietary exit level technique? And remember, that's auto-generated on the platform. Here's another example, going back to about a month ago in September in DKNG, DraftKings. A valid dynamic duo buy setup was generated at the end of September, coming into October, okay? Now, you could have taken that signal and in about a week time, just made a quick 10 points. Once again, not getting greedy, just take the 4th exit level if you want to use this one and say thank you very much. But what if you had not taken that exit level? Well, most likely you would have given everything back, because look what happened to the stock. This is why we say there is just so much power. There are so many powerful tools on our platform. This is all included. The scanning, along with the auto-generated dynamic duo signals, along with the auto-generated exit levels, all on the platform. Yours free, along with a host of other very powerful tools that I've accumulated in 4 decades on the platform, one click away. Remember, this all comes with personalized tech support as well. So let's break it down, okay? Our dynamic duo combo plus 12 months of the PTS Primo Charting Platform. If you purchased all of this separately, all right? If we never had this and you said, you know what, I just want to buy that dynamic duo setup and I want the platform. All right, well, strategy number 4 would cost you upwards of close to $700. The PET D would cost you close to $3,000. And remember, we said a year's worth of the platform would cost you close to $1,800. So altogether, without this special we're offering you today, it would cost you close to $5,500. That's a lot of money, especially at the end of the year. We know a lot of you have expenses. We don't want to increase those expenses any more than they have to be. So we're not going to charge you anywhere near that. Here's what we're going to do for you today. For a one-time payment of $497, you can establish that one-time payment and only pay $97 a month, okay? Remember, that is a great offer, which includes a full year of the platform. Now, a lot of our students say, Steve, you know what? I've had a good year. I have plenty of money. I want to have a one-time payment. Well, you can pay in full, and we'll just charge you for the PET D. We'll completely waive the cost of the platform. We'll completely waive the cost of strategy number 4, and you'll just pay for the Pet D, a one-time fee of $29.95. But this is a really, really great offer because think of it, for less than $500, one-time payment, and only $97 per month, you'll get the complete Dynamic Duo course, you'll get a full year of the platform, and on top of that, you'll get educational correspondence with myself, meaning that you'll get my personal email address. You can contact me via email whenever you'd like, and I'll be there to answer any question, okay? This is, once again, a great offer, and as I often say, there are only 2 months remaining in 2020, okay? I know all of us, myself included, we all have goals that we set at the beginning of the year where we want to be by the end of the year. And I can honestly say, from the students I've spoken to and from my personal trading in the past, we never really reached those goals, okay? It's really sad. I remember when I first started trading, I had all these goals, what I wanted to do and everything, and we never really got there. It wasn't until I became consistent with trading the Dynamic Duo that I was able to reach my goals. So only 2 months left. You owe it to yourself. You really do. As someone who's really struggled, I know exactly what you're going through. You owe it to yourself to start off 2021 in the right direction. And the way you can do that is becoming a student of mine, is by taking this great offer in the Dynamic Duo course, okay? All right, so here's how to take advantage of this great offer, because it's for a limited time only. And trust me, that price will once again go back up to like $5,500. What you want to do is contact Pro Trader Strategies. They're my sister site. They developed the platform with me. They're in charge of all the discounts and the pricing. I would suggest, if you have questions about pricing and structuring that $497 one-time payment along with a monthly payment of $97, you can call them directly, 310-598-6677. There's absolutely no obligation. They have trading consultants manning the phones right now. They would be more than happy to answer any question you have about pricing or about tech support or about the platform itself and what else is offered on that. And if you're interested in learning more about the Dynamic Duo, you can go to the information page and the sign-up page online with that link you see at the very bottom there. Now, that link is not live, but if you go to the chat box on the GoToWebinar column on the far right, they've posted a live link there, so you can click that on as well, okay? Now, I promised you I would answer any questions that you have. So I want to thank you for holding off on asking me them. If you have questions, go to your question and answer box. Just type them in right now, and we have a good 5-10 minutes left, and I can answer them for you. I'll leave all this information right here if you want to copy down this phone number. Remember, there's no obligation if you want to call Pro Trader Strategies. They have trading consultants manning the phones. They would be more than happy to answer any question you have, or take your order over the phone if you like. But let me open up the question and answer box. And someone is saying, can you please call them? Okay, I'll give the information. I know they usually don't do that, but I'll have them do that for you, okay? I'll relay that information to them. Someone's asking, I usually get this question all the time from beginning students. How can you just say that earnings and news are meaningless? We've all seen stocks go straight up when earnings are announced and vice versa. Is price everything you need to be a successful trader? That's a great question, but let me just say this. When I say, I've never really said it's meaningless, I say that price is everything you need to know. In other words, if you want to continue to follow earnings, if you want to continue to follow fundamental news, by all means, go ahead, because a good educator doesn't tell you what you're doing wrong. A good educator will just tell you what you need to do to become consistent. If you feel you must use those things, if you can't cut the umbilical cord, that's fine. All right, we're not going to tell you not to do that. But I am here as living proof, someone who's been trading and continues to trade for 4 decades, that I'm here to tell you that there is in no way that you really need in what my mentors called useless information. And remember, these were traders on the floor before me who taught me these same principles. They said, Steve, why would you look at news? What possible reason do you need to look at that? And they said the same thing that I tell my students. They said, for every time you see a news announcement and it comes out in the stock or the future or whatever goes up, most of the time, the information we teach you was already signaling those things well in advance, okay? For example, go to my Twitter page. There was something I tweeted. I believe there was a chart in UPS, okay? I believe they came out with their earnings yesterday or maybe today. I don't know because I don't follow earnings. And I believe the earnings were actually good. But if you look at my what I tweeted, the Pet D, which is a translator, actually signaled that that stock was in a downtrend a full week before, days before the news came out. And then we've seen what the market did today, and I think UPS fell out of bed today. So why did I need to wait for the earnings when I knew well in advance? Now, remember, once again, go ahead if you want to do that. But I am living proof. I have stopped looking at news and earnings. I don't watch TV. I don't watch any of the, the so-called market news stations. I don't listen to earnings. I've stopped looking at that 4 decades ago, and I'm still here. So why overcomplicate your trading? There's absolutely no need to do it. Now, I never said it's meaningless. If you want to do it, go ahead. But for my personal trading, I have never seen any consistency in that. For every time I can tell you on the floor, remember, when I first started trading on the floor, I was in charge of making markets. I was a specialist, as we get the name specialist trading. I was in charge of making markets in 60 stocks. I was taught that I had to know the earnings estimates for all of those stocks, because what type of a trader would I be if I were making markets in them? And I had no idea on what those earnings estimates were. So I kept track, I looked at all value line and all the earnings estimates on what those stocks were supposed to happen. And I can tell you, firmly that it was useless. Half the times there were supposed to be great earnings. The earnings would come out and they were over exceeding what the earnings would be. And half the time the stock went straight down. And half the time they were terrible earnings, and they were just terrible, and the stock earnings would come out and they were worse than expected. The stock would go straight up. So it didn't help me at all. And then once my mentors started teaching me these things that I teach my students, I saw that the market, through these tools we teach you, was telling me in advance, well before the earnings, well before some news announcement. If you even go back to March of this year, well before the market had that mini depression decline, when the market fell out of bed, our tools, and I was tweeting about this, were saying negative signals about the market well before this advanced news about the pandemic came out. So there's really no reason. It doesn't mean that it's meaningless. I never say it's meaningless. There's no reason if you don't feel you have to follow these things. Trust me. As I said, I am living proof. I'm still here, and I'm not looked at any earnings. I have not looked at any news events. I don't watch any TV news or any TV market channels. I haven't done that in 4 decades. And so all that does is actually make me an unsuccessful trader. So it's up to you. Remember, you're in charge of your trading. That's our goal. Okay? Another question, I think this person asked this question probably while we were already in process of it, but can you trade this intraday? Yes, you saw me, I traded and I showed you examples of a 2-hour chart in the British pound, which could have potentially captured $2,000 in a couple of days. And I showed you a 30-minute time frame chart of the E-mini futures just 2 days ago, which could have potentially, now we're not going to tell you because everyone gets in and out different places, but potentially could have captured, I almost hate to say this, $24,000. So it's amazing what you can do when you only focus on the market. Now, we know that looking back in hindsight, the market is falling out of bed because of these concerns, because of the pandemic. But guess what? The E-mini was flashing sell signals on Sunday, well before any of this came out. So that's why I say it is in no way required to look at any of this. That's the beauty of making your trading simple, okay? It is the easiest thing in the world. My mentor said again, the easiest thing in the world to overcomplicate your trading. Anyone can do that, whether you've been trading 20 years or 20 minutes. Anyone can go to all these chat rooms, follow all these earnings, look at all these estimates, look at all this economic news, look at all this support and resistance. It doesn't take a lot of character to do that. But it really takes a lot of characters to simplify your trading. And simplify means to let go of those things, to not focus on them and to not require them in your trading anymore. But once you do that, you're in for the ride of your life, because that's when you'll start to become consistent, okay? Okay, as we close here, good questions. I want to thank you all for sticking around and asking those questions. As we close here, remember, if you have questions concerning pricing, or signing yourself up for that really deep discount. And remember, the normal price is close to $5,500. Well, for less than $500 for a one-time fee and for $97 per month, you can be up and running as early as today and be a student of mine and sending me emails with questions, okay? Take advantage of this. Contact Pro Trader Strategies. I would suggest calling them up 310-598-6677. Absolutely no obligation. They'd be happy to answer any of your pricing questions. And if you're interested, they can sign you up over the phone as well. But remember, this is a limited time offer, probably for the next 24 hours or 48 at the very most. So don't sit on this, okay? As we take one last look at our disclaimer, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday and coming to listen to me speak. I hope you learned something today. I hope you learned something about our philosophy. But most of all, I really look forward to all of you becoming students of mine. I look forward to having the honor to teach you and to teach you the same things that were taught to me in the Dynamic Duo course. Thank you so much. Have a great trading week. I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.